Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to look at modern data defense through the lens of a classic, powerful metaphor, castle defense. Think of your organization's digital assets as the ultimate treasure, sitting right in the center of a heavily fortified keep. Now, securing that treasure isn't just about building one massive wall and calling it a day. It's really about engineering overlapping, highly intelligent systems of defense. Okay, let's dive into this. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly do you protect data when threats are constantly evolving? It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Attackers are constantly shifting their tactics, developing brand new exploits, and finding wild, creative ways to breach perimeters. So how do you defend yourself when the enemy's playbook literally changes daily? Well, the secret is realizing that while specific tactics evolve, the fundamental architecture of a structured, layered defense can withstand almost anything. We don't just sit around and react to threats. We build systems that are purposely designed to absorb and neutralize them. But before we can start building our walls, we need to understand exactly what it is we're defending. And that brings us to the ultimate goal of information security. It is a continuous 24/7 battle to maintain three core things: data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Look, this isn't just a technical checkbox for the IT team. It's the underlying philosophy keeping your entire digital kingdom alive. If you fail to maintain these three elements, well, your fortress is already fallen. So here is our blueprint for today. 1. The core, CIA Triad. 2. Profiling attackers, Stride methodology. 3. Friendly hackers, bug bounties. 4. Internal integrity, Clark-Wilson model. And finally, 5. Assessing risk with NIST. Let's move to and see how this builds. Section 1. The core, CIA Triad. Think of this triad as the absolute bedrock of our digital fortress. First up, confidentiality. This means making sure data doesn't fall into the wrong hands, but just as importantly, ensuring it does reliably reach the right hands. We lock this down through strict authentication, like those multi-factor authentication codes you get on your phone, and heavy encryption. Second, we have integrity. This is all about absolute consistency. When data is traveling across networks, it absolutely cannot be altered. So we use cryptographic hashes to verify nothing's been tampered with, and we maintain rigorous backups. That way, if an attack does happen, we can restore the data to a state we actually trust. And finally, availability. Think about it. The most secure system in the world is completely useless if your authorized users can't actually get into it. So this relies on maintaining enough bandwidth, keeping up with software patches, and using firewalls and load balancers to juggle traffic so our servers never just crash and burn. Section 2. Profiling attackers. Stride methodology. To really understand the enemy lurking outside our walls, we use this classic profiling model created by Microsoft way back in 1999. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how attackers think, mapping their specific threats directly to those security properties we just built. Stride is an acronym, and breaking it down shows how they strike right at our foundation. S is for spoofing, basically impersonating someone else, which is a direct attack on our authentication. T is tampering with data, which strikes right at the heart of our integrity. R is repudiation, or a user claiming they didn't do something, which makes undeniable, rock-solid logging totally essential. I stands for information disclosure, a clear, obvious breach of our confidentiality. D is for denial of service, an attack designed solely to crush our availability. And E is elevation of privilege, where an attacker gains unauthorized capabilities to just completely bypass our authorization. By categorizing threats this way, we know exactly which wall of our fortress is currently under siege. All right, moving right along, Section 3, friendly hackers, bug bounties. So the question is, how do we actively test our perimeter? I love this quote from our sources. It's like hiring a thief to try and break into your house through an open window to find the flaws before the real criminals do. It's such a perfect analogy. We purposefully invite people with a hacker's mindset to throw everything they possibly have at our fortress walls. We want them to find those critical weaknesses legally before the bad guys do. Now, there are generally two main ways organizations go about this. On one side, we have penetration testing. These are professional, contracted teams brought in to evaluate a very specific scope of your network. They simulate a full-scale coordinated attack to give you a highly comprehensive report at the end. But over on the other side, we have bug bounty hunting. This is entirely crowdsourced. You have independent freelancers using platforms like HackerOne to act as middlemen. These platforms secure the legal permission for these hunters to poke around the massive, sprawling systems of huge companies.
The hunter isn't evaluating your whole network. Instead, they are usually hunting for a single, deeply hidden vulnerability. If they find one, they get paid a bounty. It's a remarkably scalable way to keep your digital defenses under constant, relentless pressure testing.
Section 4. Internal Integrity. Clark-Wilson Model. We've spent a lot of time talking about the outer perimeter, but let's shift our focus inward. So the crucial point is, what happens when someone is actually already inside the fortress? We need internal guards, and the Clark-Wilson model is absolutely obsessed with internal data integrity. The core idea is that a user can't just walk right up and grab the gold. No, they have to go through a trusted middleman, a certified program. This is known as the access control triad. A subject uses a program to access an object. This middleman program enforces what we call well-formed transactions, ensuring every single change keeps the system perfectly consistent. It also enforces very strict separation of duty, meaning the person who writes or certifies the program cannot be the same person who uses it. Plus, it rigidly separates protected inside data from outside data that needs to be completely verified before it can be trusted. It's an incredibly tight, highly structured way to prevent internal corruption from ever taking root. And finally, Section 5. Assessing risk with NIST.
Stepping way back to look at the overarching strategy for the entire kingdom, we turn to the absolute gold standard of risk management, NIST. 18. That is the massive number of distinct risk and control families outlined in the sprawling NIST Special Publication 853. This framework gives you baseline controls that cover practically everything you could possibly imagine, from strict digital access rules all the way down to the literal physical protection of your actual server racks. It is, without a doubt, the ultimate checklist for securing any organization. To figure out exactly which of those controls you actually need to implement, NIST 830 provides a very methodical 4-step roadmap. Step 1 is to prepare. This is where you define your scope and figure out your risk tolerance. Step 2 is to conduct the assessment, actively identifying threats and calculating the real-world impact of an attack. Step 3 is to communicate those results clearly up the chain to the leadership team. And Step 4 is to maintain the assessment through continuous monitoring. This last one is huge because a risk assessment is a living, breathing process, not just a one-and-done event. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we actually score these risks. We look at it in 2 distinct phases. First is inherent risk. This is the raw, honestly terrifying level of risk if you had absolutely zero defenses in place, just wide open. Once you understand that scary baseline, you apply your security controls. What you are left with is your residual risk. We calculate this leftover risk by combining the likelihood of an attack actually happening, the potential impact if it does, and the sheer strength of the controls you've just put in place. Once leadership has that final residual risk score sitting on their desk, they basically have 4 core treatment options. First, they can simply accept it, deciding the risk is minimal enough to just live with and monitor. Second, they can avoid it entirely by shutting down whatever risky activity is causing the problem. Third, they can transfer it, maybe by shifting the financial liability over to a cyber insurance provider. Or fourth, they can mitigate it, which means spending the time and money to implement even tighter security controls to actively bring that risk score down. And that brings us full circle, right back to the overall health of your digital fortress. Listen, every single organization out there faces massive inherent risks daily, from simple spoofing all the way up to complex data tampering. But the true test of your layered defense, from the CIA Triad at your core to the bug bounty hunters stress testing your perimeter to your Clark-Wilson internal guards, is what happens after the defenses do their job. You probably know your inherent risk by now, but are your security controls truly strong enough to survive the residual risk? That is the defining question every digital defender has to answer for themselves. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.